Good afternoon, YouTube world. I have another lecture for you, another biblical lecture. The biblical lecture today will be between the two warriors, the two gladiators in the battle, because today's lesson is going to be about God will fight your battle. He will vanquish the nemesis. Basically, God's amenities. But you have to have faith, you have to be obeisant to God, and you have to be ingratiating. And when you have a triad of that, God will deliver you. He will do His absolute best. So today's lesson is going to be between I Samuel chapter 17 and II Chronicles 20. But before I get into the lecture, we're going to do some little praise and worship in song. This song is by Merriam-Webster. It's called You Have Made Me Glad. It's called Made Me Glad. Okay. I will bless the Lord from heaven, and I will trust Him at all times. He has delivered me from all fear. He has set my feet upon a rock, and I will not be moved. And I'll say of the Lord, You are my shield, my strength, my portion, deliverer, my shelter, strong tower, a very present help in time of need. Who have I in heaven but You? There's none I desire beside You. For You have made me glad, and I'll say of the Lord, You are my shield, my strength, my portion, deliverer, my shelter, strong tower, a very present help in time of need. You are my shield, my strength, my portion, deliverer, my shelter, strong tower, a very present help in time of need. All right. My voice is not really up to par right now. I have a cold, but through the Lord all things are possible. All right, well, let's get started. All right, I'm going to start this off with the ultimate warrior, the ultimate soldier, the ultimate, I think one of the great heroes of the Bible, King David, who wrote all of the Psalms. He's a musician and a poet. If you don't know King David's story by now, I highly recommend you to read Samuel. I highly recommend you to read the Psalms, because David is a man that had a heart of the Lord, but David sinned. He committed adultery and acquired Bathsheba through that adultery. But anyway, we're not going to talk about David's sin. We're going to talk about David as a valiant person, a valiant servant of the Lord. That's why he was after God's heart, and he had a heart of the Lord. David was a very valiant person, a very courageous person. David was a shepherd herder before he became king. He was a laborer. And that's what God works. He takes a simple person and he makes them magnanimous. He makes a simple person magnificent. That metamorphosis of the simple to the great, God does it all the time. But he uses the meek, he uses the quiet, he uses the timid even though David was really none of those. So, as I said before, this is about God will fight your battle. You don't really need to do anything. When you trust in the Lord, your footsteps become His. And He gives you that ultimate strength to fight the battle. And He does it all for you. I'm going to show you how He does it in these two biblical books, Samuel and Chronicles. So let's begin. Now I'm going to start in 1 Samuel, as I said before, verse 17, or chapter 17 if you will. I'm going to start with Goliath's description, because Goliath's description is very intimidating. He's a very prodigious man. His stature itself is very intimidating. But as you will see as I read further, David was not intimidated. These are my notes. A little disseminated across the page, but everyone has their way of doing things. So, let's get started. Now, I want to bring up a very important topic in these two chapters called forbearance from sin. Forbearance from sin. Forbearance is defined as abstinence, to refrain from, self-control, sufferance, which is patient endurance. I love that. Sufferance, patient endurance, intolerance. Now, if you're going to abstain from sin, or refrain from sin, or have self-control from sin, or have patient endurance, which David had when he sinned, because he had to deal with a lot of people that wanted to kill him, armies, and especially his own son Absalom, which broke his heart. Because, well, you can read that and find out, but we're not going to discuss that today. And intolerance, or to tolerate sin. Now, when I talk about these two books, biblical books, forbearance from sin, you will see what I mean. Because David, before I read, David could have well invested in sin in this chapter, because as you will see when I start reading, there is a certain individual, if not two, who are jealous of David, very envious of David. So David could have fell into that sin and rose up against those people and fought them and even killed them, because David was another Samson, if you will. He had that vigor, he had that valor that Samson had. And David also had a bit of a temper, but David knew how to maintain temperance. So we're going to get into it. Okay, now, chapter 17, 1 Samuel. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle. Notice the word battle, very important word in our lecture today. That word battle is going to jump, skip, and leap throughout these two chapters. It will reappear. It's kind of like an apparition, if you will. There are armies to battle. That's a very important word, because God will fight the battle. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Sokok or Soko, which belonged to Judah, and pitched between Sokok or Soko and Azekah in Ephes Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. So it's Israel, God's chosen people, versus the nemesis, which are the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. Notice there was a valley between them. You have war going on each side, and then you got the peaceful valley in between them. If you know what a valley looks like. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath, a Goth, G-A-T-H, whose height was 6 cubits and the span. Now in my Bible here, my Holy Bible, King James Version, which I prefer my British version because I think it's more poetic and the language is just, it's astounding. Now Goliath's description is very egregious. It says about 9 feet 9 inches, so Goliath is really a giant. You know, if you look at the Guinness World Book of Records, when they show these giants, he was a giant. 9 feet 9 inches, much bigger than David, right? Who's a shepherd herder. Okay? He's a shepherd herder. He's a laborer, you know, as you will see here. He's a servant also. Alright, so let's get back to it. Now this is Goliath's description. We already know he's 9 feet 9 inches. That has been, the 6 cubits and a span, that has been deciphered as 9 feet 9 inches, translated as 9 feet 9 inches. And he had an helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass, which is translated as 125 pounds. So you have this big man who was, his head is topped with a brass helmet. Okay. He has a coat of mail which contains 5,000 shekels of brass. Brass is, how should I say, you kind of like shuffling a deck of cards. You know, you spread out the deck. Well, imagine that being brass and you spread it out across the table. And then you take that and you make a kind of, you put it over a coat. You know, you make a shield with that. That's pretty heavy, 125 pounds, right? A person can weigh 125 pounds. I've weighed 125 pounds, right? And he had greaves of brass upon his legs and a target of brass between his shoulders. So basically this man is enveloped in brass. He's walking brass, okay? He's walking armor. And then you have to consider his physical body. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. Okay, so he's ready. He has more than enough ammunition. Not only does he have the articles of ammunition, his physical body is ammunition also. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Okay, he's saying, am I not a Philistine? Am I not greater than you? And you're just Saul's servants, like, you're beneath me. Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. Okay, now this is where he's looking for David. Alright? I'm just looking at my notes real quick. Right. Now, he's saying, now I want you to send a man that I can fight. Send a man that will fight me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. So it's like this. Look, he beats me, I'll serve you. I'll be a prisoner, I'll be a captive. I beat Israel, you guys serve me. You're my prisoner, you're my captive. You're my servant. You'll be back in bondage, just like in the book of Exodus, when the Israelites were in bondage. You'll be back there, right, for 400 years. You'll be back there. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And when Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Notice fear here. Fear is illustrated in both of these books. They were greatly afraid and dismayed. Dismayed, discouraged, and greatly afraid. So not only are you discouraged, you're afraid. Fear runs parallel with a lot of destructing emotions that can literally send a person into decay. Fear runs in parallel with addiction. Fear runs in parallel with defeat. Fear runs in parallel with divide and conquer. Fear runs in parallel with so many different things that can destroy somebody. So once you're fearful, you're bringing in that negative energy. You're allowing Lucifer to do his work. And fear is something only the devil can put in your head, because why should you be afraid of something? It's natural for us to be afraid of a human, but the fact that they were just fearful. I mean, you know, the description of this man, right? 9 feet, 9 inches, okay? Literally a walking barrel, if you will, of brass. You know, he has a staff, he has a spear rather. He's ready, the staff of his spear, and he has his shield. He's ready to go. They're intimidated. Fear runs also parallel with intimidation. So they are afraid. Now David, this is where they tell you who King David is. Now David, I'm on chapter 17, 1 Samuel 12. Okay? Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse. So he's the son of Jesse. And he had 8 sons, and the man went among men from an old man in the days of Saul. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Now when you think of a sheep herder, what do you think of? You know, write 3 words that you think of when you think of a sheep herder. Right? I already said meek. What else would you think of a sheep herder? Right. Sheep herder. I would think meek. I would think timid, which I mentioned before. I would think that person was a tranquil person. Sheep herder. I would think that person wasn't educated, even though this was a different time. They wasn't educated. I would think they were of low social stature. There was not a lot of room for social mobility, if you will, because a king is at the very top of the tier, right? And a sheep herder is at the very bottom, right? So I would say this person is at the very bottom. Or if you want to think of the Indian caste system, right? You have Brahmins, I believe, at the top, right? And somebody that's a lavatory cleaner will always be a lavatory cleaner. Someone that's a grave digger will always be a grave digger. There's no social mobility, okay? So that's what I would think. Somebody at the very bottom. Somebody that's at the very bottom of the pit, if you will. Not that sheep herding is a bad thing, but socially, social construction, that's what I would think of. All right? But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Notice Bethlehem. And notice the connection to Jesus Christ. Bethlehem, Jesus Christ. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. Notice 40. You know? The temptation of Christ, 40. He was 40 days fasting, 40 days. Okay, so now the Philistine is ready. For 40 days, he's basically beleaguering the Israelites. Like, come on, for 40 days. I'm ready to fight. Give me somebody to fight. Let's do this. Let's do it. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah or ephah of this parched corn, this dry corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. So now David is a servant. He's basically bringing the army food. He's bringing them food. So how do you think they look at David? This young boy, sheep herder, a servant, you know. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000. And look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. So he's serving the army, the captain of the army. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. Didn't Denzel Washington make a movie called something of Elah? I could swear. I don't mean to get on topic, but it just ring, just came into me. Right? Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper. Now, he's a sheep herder. He leaves the sheep with a keeper. And also, if somebody's a sheep herder, they have to be very organized. Because when you're bringing in a flock, sheep or cattle, you have to know how to lead them in, and there's a lot of organization. So he's also a leader also. You have to know how to lead these animals in. Those are also qualities of a leader, of a king, if you ask me. Okay, he left the sheep with a keeper and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. There goes the word battle again. So the host is ready to fight. He's shouting, let's go to war. We're ready to battle these Philistines. Let's get this Goliath. Let's shut him up. Let's capture all these Philistines. Let's take all their natural resources. Let's take, I don't know if I shouldn't say women, but let's take everything that's theirs. Let's take their land. Let's take their livestock. Let's take their vegetation. Let's everything they've harvested. Let's take that. Because that's what happens in battle. When you vanquish someone in battle, everything that is theirs becomes yours. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. Alright? And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage. Here we go, you have a keeper of the sheep and a keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren. Hi, I bring you good tidings, I bring you cheese, I bring you corn, I bring you 10 loaves. It doesn't say bread, but I'm assuming they're 10 loaves of bread, because the Bible, bread is throughout the bread echoes throughout the whole Bible. Bread is a very vital food in the Bible. It echoes throughout the world, something in 10 loaves of bread. Right? Now after he salutes, and as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion of the Philistine of Gath. Here goes Goliath again, running his mouth again, by name out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. Everything he said before. Everything he said before. Why are you come on to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and you servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. Okay? And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. There goes the word fear. There's fear again. There's afraid again. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up? And it shall be that the man who killed him, the king, will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. So what will the person that defies, that defeats, that vanquishes, that conquers and divides the Philistine, what will they receive? What will be their accolade? Right? What will be their gift? What will be their reward? It will be daughter, the king's daughter, and great riches. They'll be affluent, abundance of property, abundance of livestock, abundance of food, wealth. Yeah, what else can they want? And make his father's house free in Israel. right? So Israel would be free. Free from these Philistines, free, if you will. I don't want to say a free nation, but free. And David spoke to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? I'm going to repeat that. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? David doesn't know that he's not circumcised. I mean, it could mean uncircumcised as not being Jewish and not circumcised, but I'm taking it as spiritual circumcision. He's not spiritual circumcised. It could be that too. That he should defy the armies of the living God. And I'm thinking spiritual circumcision, because he said that he could have the audacity, that he could be that bold to come and defy the armies of the living God. I mean, who is this man, right? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, the eldest brother, heard that he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. Now, this is jealousy, envidiousness, I think, definitely. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? Why have you come down here? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? So he's reminding him, you're a sheep herder. Who did you leave the sheep with? That's your job. Not to come down and talk to the army and being inquisitive about who is this Goliath and what is the person that beats him going to receive. No, you're a sheep herder, right? Do your job. I'm your older brother. I'm telling you what to do. I'm giving you instruction, heed to instruction. Be a diligent sheep herder. Be a diligent servant. What is this? Would you want to fight? What? I know thy pride, he says to David, and the naughtiness of thine heart. He's telling him his heart isn't clean. For thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. Now I think he's telling David that David is he's out of order. He's not heeding to the order. He's not on the linear line he's supposed to be on. David's linear line does not have variables according to his brother: warrior, gladiator, vindicator, victorious. He doesn't have any of that. He's sheep herder, variable X, sheep herder, variable Y, servant, variable, let's say variable H, worker, laborer. That's what he is to him. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? Why are you upset? Why are you being so loquacious in a negative way? Why are you talking foolishness, basically? And he turned from him toward another and spake after the same manner. So he's trying to convince his brother's speaking to someone else, trying to convince him, like, why is he down here? What's his purpose? For what? It's useless, And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. So what the brother didn't know is that they overheard what David was saying, went back to Saul and told Saul. Now Saul sent for David. And David sent for Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. Now David acknowledges that he's a servant. He acknowledges he's a servant socially. His social assignment is servant. But in here, he's a warrior. And he's ready to fight the battle, which they're seeing now. And they're astonished, like, whoa, David is ready to fight. Now David reveals something to them that they didn't know. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. So he's saying, David, you're not trained, you're a boy. This man is baptized in war. You know what I mean? This man is imbued in war. You know, he is saturated in war. This is who he is. From he was a boy, he was